Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Automating New Joiners at the Global Service Desk. I'm just going to run you through a couple of things just before we get started. So the webinar is being recorded today, and that means that a copy will be sent automatically to your inbox following the presentation. It does mean that you're all muted for the duration, so please send your questions into us via the chat facility. And I know myself and Richard, we've got about a 10-minute slot to answer the Q&A part of the presentation at the end. We have also made two handouts available for you, which are available to download now or throughout the webinar as you wish. These are in your control panel. And with that, Rich, I'm going to hand over to you to get us started.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Lizzie. So as the audience for this call is our customers, I think everybody knows who I am, so I'm not going to labour the point as to who I am and what I do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get into our story here of what we've done automating a new joiners process at one of our customers. So I've labeled it here at the Global Service Desk because this is a global organization and the service desk is serving people in a variety of different geographies. So we've got different languages, character sets being used, those kind of challenges in here. And of course, maybe slightly different variations of process, depending on where the person who's joining the company is joining. So before I get into the details of what we've done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to our first slide. And I'm going to talk a little bit to these efficiency levels. And I like to kind of present this as a way of thinking about how far down a maturity curve you've got in terms of your service requests. So the first thing that we do normally when we're doing an ITSM implementation is put together a service catalog, and we help our customers to come up with a list of these are all the things that you can ask for. So we put that into a service catalog, which then enables us to categorize the tickets. But it doesn't necessarily give us anything extra on top of the ability to correctly categorize the ticket. So here our level 1 efficiency is Simon knows what to do, and I've deliberately used a specific person's name here to indicate that it's not just everybody on the desk knows how to do this. It is some specific people on the desk know how to do this, but commonly not everybody knows what to do. So what you do is you document it, and then you can hand it to any person on the team, and they can read the document and they can follow the steps in the document, and then they can do this task without ever having seen it before or not being able to remember how to do it because it's been X number of months or whatever since they last did it. So that puts us at level 2 where we've documented what to do. Level 3 is the ITSM tool knows what to do. So basically what you can do here is you can configure your tool so that when the request comes in, it gets categorized correctly. And then from then, normally they call them tasks, are created. And inside the tasks, there is descriptions of what it is that you need to do. So an individual might get a task saying, create this new user in Active Directory. They might get a task saying, assign this person a phone number according to our phone list, and update the global registry. Assign the user to whatever security groups they need to be in, etc. And these could go to different teams, right? So if we've got a new joiner, which we're talking about today, you might have in your process setting up a physical desk for that person, which means you need someone on site who's going to go and actually go and physically set the desk up. Creating Active Directory users, of course, can be done by anyone who's on the network with the right rights, which may not be the same people. Setting up telephony, those kind of things might be done by different groups. And then level 4, the ITSM tool just does it. And this is where we bring the automation into play, and we can take some, if not all of the tasks that need to be done, and we can just get the ITSM tool to fire that off and then report back that it has successfully or not successfully done it. So that's where we get to our level 4 efficiency. And of course, we haven't discussed in there things like approvals, checking that kind of stuff, which are also very core considerations when you're looking at your processes is how do we want to do this? What levels of checks do we need to have? Who are the right people who've got the skill sets to be able to do that, right? So this is one of the challenges with automation, is sometimes if you over automate, you can start causing damage at scale far quicker than humans doing the same kind of damage would be able to achieve. So there is sometimes a little bit of care that needs to be taken around this. Okay, so let's get into today's scenario. So what was the challenges that our customer was facing? So it's quite a lot of things they wanted to fill in Active Directory, they found, when they're doing their new users, and this was prone to human error. They had some mundane, time-consuming tasks. So we're looking at around about half an hour to 45 minutes worth of kind of stuff that could be done that we were looking to automate within this. And the other big challenge that they had is short lead times. So this is being told about a new joiner with not a lot of time before they actually start. So obviously, if you don't deliver, then this person's not going to be able to do their job properly from the moment they step through the door. And that then means you're paying them to do nothing, so you lose productivity. Along with all of the escalations and extra things that go along with that, which do extra drag on the organization as well. So here, this leads us to the challenge that we have, the lack of time to value. We're not realizing the value that we get out of setting people up in the right way, first time and on time. We also have this challenge of the fact that they've got worldwide teams with some nuances in each area. So things in that like where do people store their data, right? So shared drives, that kind of stuff. All of these things are built on global terms. And they had differences in terms of things like email, depending on which part of the organization they're in. So these challenges all led to inconsistent AD data, and we'll come to the benefit of that at the end, but there were specific reasons why inconsistent AD data were actually slowing down the organization. So before I get onto that, I'm going to go into what do we do? So what we've got here is we've got a screenshot of the user info section on the portal. So this is when someone is logging, I have a new employee joining my team type thing, or HR doing this activity. So the first thing they're choosing is what is the type of employee, and we had 4 different types: internal employees, external consultants, internal consultants, and some other thing that's to do with some internal system that they have, which is not immensely relevant. But it's the point with that is that you need to do different things based on the type of employee that you have. So we've now got some changes in the fields which appear based on that. But the key things here is employees get assigned to a manager. We can look that up from the list. We give them a first name, we give them a last name. As you can see in there, I have spelt my surname in a slightly more Spanish way. Let's call me Jose. And if you look down at the bottom under the desired email, you can see we've got some character replacement that's gone in there. The O has been chopped off and replaced with an O without an accent on top of it. And this is because email does not yet fully support UTF-8. It only supports UTF-7. So you cannot have these, should we say, non-classic UK, US characters. So languages such as Danish, Swedish, Polish, French, German, Spanish, all have some of these extra characters in, and you can't create email addresses with them in. So we correct that by doing a character replacement, and we give the user an opportunity to then change the email address to put it in the form that they actually want, should the character replacement not have worked in the right way. So we've got that part built into it. We've got job titles, departments, divisions. As you can see, division is a drop down, company is a drop down, city is a drop down. And this is quite important in that now we're able to drive the data we're pushing into Active Directory just by using a simple bit of data validation on the way in. So now it is not possible for everybody to spell the name of the city slightly differently. You can also see from there we've put addresses in, so we can actually make sure that in Active Directory everyone has their office address in there as well, which is just too cumbersome to try to get a big list of addresses and get people to copy and paste in when you're trying to do that in a manual process in Active Directory. By and large, you'll find the staff simply won't do it because it's not something that's going to be checked well enough to make sure that they're doing it in the right way, and you're going to get errors creeping in there. So we came to this all through discussion and working through in workshops what their process was and what their needs were around this. But you can see here that there's quite a lot of stuff that's gone into this, you know, in terms of thinking, you know, putting in phone numbers and having those allocated. Can you put in existing phone numbers? Can you not put in existing phone numbers? Is that just managed by IT? Is it managed by telephony, you know, as its own separate thing within the organization? All of these things you need to work through and work out well in your process before you can get to the stage where you can say, yeah, this is the screen that we want to have and have that built. So having got that in, we've now captured the key information that we need about the person to be able to create their Active Directory user. So what else do we have in here? So we've got this hardware and software. So here we have got a drop down for a computer type, assuming the person wants a computer. And we have examples such as large 15.6-inch screen with a numeric keypad or standard 14-inch. So the idea behind this is that we are giving the person who's filling out the form something that they understand and is pretty stable. Whereas in the background, we have got a list of hardware types, which is their standard hardware. So if you want a standard 14-inch laptop, currently you'll get a whatever is on that list of standard hardware, right? So we maintain that within the ITSM tool. When you choose that in the view that the service desk have, they will be able to see that. So that means they can start doing their activities around procuring that hardware, whether it's from storage or buying it from a supplier, whatever it is that their processes that they need to do, they can start triggering that off immediately. But it makes the selection easily rather than saying, do you want an HPMV 6057 or an 8057? And managers are like, do I care? Do I need to know the difference between those things? How do I make a decision, right? Do you need a numeric keyboard? What size of screen do you want? Do you need some extra monitors, 24-inch, etc.? So we've got that quite easy translation going on there. And we also have on here the selection of the software. So the software there, again, gives a standardized list. When you click on the add software, it comes up with a pop-up and you can see extra descriptions within there. So it helps you to understand what is this software for and you know, how might it be used, what kind of people would be needing to use it. So you can provide some enriched information there to help guide people into choosing the right things. And there's some extra magic that sits behind that as well, which I will come on to with this part. So Active Directory user groups. So here we're using the example from the packages that you can choose for business intelligence, which is exactly the same as hardware and software in this organization. If you choose a particular package in order to get access to that package, you need to be in, I say you, your user needs to be in a certain Active Directory security group, and then everything else will work for you. So that is something that this organization already had as a capability. So we're just piggybacking on that in terms of the automation that we've got out of the ITSM tool. So we've now got a list of all the packages. We have a list of all of the Active Directory groups that they need to go to. We have a list of all the software. And in the software example, if you're in the right security group, then the software will be automatically installed onto your computer by the software deployment tool that the customer already has in their organization. So again, it's not something we did as a part of this project, but which is something we're piggybacking on. So all of this is invisible to the end user. The service desk, of course, are able to see these. So they're able to see this mapping. When we go to do the create, what it means is we can now have a list of security groups that we want this user to be in. Okay, so we get all of these things in, and it's just done. So we don't have any chances here where someone has accidentally clicked on the wrong security group as they were doing it, and instead of doing GSEC BI functional access operations, they did GSEC BI functional access operations KPIs or something like that, because I know they've got some very similarly named groups in there, and then didn't spot that they clicked on the wrong one, and now someone's got access to a report they shouldn't have, and hasn't been approved just due to human error. So there's quite a few things here which we're getting gains from in terms of what that automation provides to us. So, so this is quite a simple example in terms of what we're needing to show, but there's quite a lot to it in terms of what we actually needed to do to get there. So what I'm going to do now is to move on to the summary here of what we did. So what did we get out of it? Key benefits were reducing delivery time. As you can see there, we had around about 30 to 45 minutes of effort of people going into Active Directory, creating the user. Then they needed to come out and they needed to make sure that a certain bit of PowerShell was run, but not everybody had the right to do that, to make sure their mailbox was working. Then they had to go and put them all in the right security groups based on all the packages that were selected, etc. All of this was driven from a spreadsheet that they had. We have saved those 45 minutes of human effort, and it means that now, in terms of delivery time, we can do more of these within a day. Okay. We've also put into here, we've modeled the tasks. So we did a combination of level 3 and level 4 from my opening slide. So now we can have tasks when we have multiple people coming in that is the hardware task. So we can have one person who's allocated, go and spend an hour this morning, run through all of the hardware tasks and get all of the hardware ordered for those new starters. We don't need to worry about whether the automations run or not on those. We just need to get the hardware lined up. So one person can run through and do those. So it gives them the ability to break up the tasks better as well. And this works quite nicely into the third point. Rather than being asked every 2 hours or so, can you go back and see if you need to order one more laptop from what you ordered earlier on today? You can just do it all in blocks, and you can organize your time better. And if you've got tasks you don't like, you can stack them up, get them all done, get them all out of the way, and you don't have to worry about it. But what was really interesting with this was when we demoed this to the service desk, they practically cheered. They were really, really happy to see this. They'd been involved a lot in terms of the creation of what the right process was, so the documentation of the steps that they needed to do, and working out the right ways of doing things within their organization. They're quite engaged employees. This wasn't something that had just come purely externally to them. So quite a lot of them had skin in the game, and they were loving seeing the progress that had been made in terms of taking away the bits that they all fully understood and didn't really want to have to be doing too much. And it was also sparking a lot of ideas as to where can we go next with this? What other things can we add into this process, and how can we make this better, and how can we make our other service desk processes better as well? So in terms of their just general well-being as an employee, it was ticking boxes in there as well. And I have to say with that one, that was the one that kind of surprised me a little bit, just how strong that was. I was seeing it more as being maybe the manager would be really happy, and the service desk would be happy that they didn't have to do something quite so boring, but they were really excited. And then this big benefit here, which hasn't yet been fully realized by the customer, but it's hooking into several projects which have been running or have had elements which have run over the last 2 to 3 years, where lots of different IT systems use Active Directory as a data source. So if you've got in there, for example, department data, and you extract that into your whatever it is system, you can now report on the departments, the cities, etc., the companies that people are working for reliably, because you're getting the data in a consistent fashion, and you can use that to drive other things. And that was something that they couldn't do before, because the entry point to this data wasn't solid. So because they knew they were going to be creating new bad records in AD, they didn't go and tidy up the data to drive these other things forward. Now that they've plugged the wound that's causing the data to get wrong in the first place, they can now go through and update all of their Active Directory data and then use that in those downstream systems. And also all of these things together are improving IT's reputation within the business. So people are starting to see that they are streamlining some of these processes. You know, it's a continuous path for them. They're continuing to get better in the way that they deal with their requests, you know, by running through those different stages from earlier. So what did we learn while we did this? So really, for me, top learning, start with error handling, right? It's very, very easy to get into, oh, we'll automate this and we fill in these fields and it will work perfectly. And then, you know, we'll have all of this stuff out of the way. And that's great. But you always need to think, when you're integrating two systems together, at some point, this integration is going to break. Somehow, some way, someone will do something stupid, some certificate will expire and it won't be on the list to be updated, some network failure will happen, DNS will be updated and, you know, packets won't route correctly. All of these kind of things, something at some point is going to come along and break this. And how are you going to handle that? So you need to have the error handling built into the automation itself, but you also need to have your error handling in your process. So one of the things that can be done in this particular example is tracking how far did it get through the process and what did it do? Did it do it successfully? And then knowing what are the steps to be able to go and do that manually, so that if you can't work out how to fix the automation within a reasonable time frame, you can still deliver your service request within a reasonable time frame, right? You just have to switch back to your older manual process, but you've got that documented and you know where to go, right? So there's an element of making sure we thought this through in the first place so that we are able to catch it when it does happen. And again, the more the automation is able to provide you with good information about what went wrong, why it went wrong, you know, what it did and didn't do, then the easier it is to know where you are within the process, okay? And the other thing is, data can be complex. It requires thinking. There was quite a lot of thinking that went into this. We've got fields like the default path of someone's home drive, and it varies depending on which location they're at. So then we need to have the city being chosen, and then we need to have a list of all of those paths for each of those cities. So, you know, there's more things which are going on in the background there. How quickly will that data change? How often does this organization add or remove cities? Can we make sure that when we add a city, it will get added into the city table? Because is the process for adding in new sites hooked into that? How will IT become aware of it before people start putting the requests for new users in? And how will they get all of that stuff sorted out? So we need to be thought through. Obviously, these are all solvable problems, but they are things that take a while to work through, you know, and getting some of those lists together, you know, getting some of the data translations that we've needed to do took a while as well. So having gone through all of that, to make it pertinent to you guys on the call, how do you take that and progress that within your environment? How do you make use of what we've just gone through here? So first step that I normally go to when I'm engaging with a customer on this is analyzing the current service desk data. So here, what you can do is you can use, if you have a service catalog, which is my first step that I went to, a service catalog that has got all of the right types of requests in it, then it is possible to use that data that you've got to work out how many times did we have one of these types of requests? How often are we having them? So the frequency of different types of activity, there's the second point. If you're able to track durations, then even better. Most of the organizations that I work with do not track durations on the tasks that they're working on because it adds an extra overhead, and it's a challenge to get people to reliably fill things in. But we do have customers who've done that. And then when they have done it, then we are able to look at it and say, right, well, a new user, according to the data, the average is 57.5 minutes. You know, so we're now basing this based on, you know, what happened last year at your organization, rather than, oh, we think that takes about half an hour. So now we can work out, well, if we were to automate that, how many half hours are we saving, or how many 15 minutes are we saving, or how many 5 minutes are we saving? And if we find that we're saving lots of 5 minutes, we find that adds up to a certain cost. And then we can look to see, you know, that would be, the benefit that we will get out of the automation there in one aspect, in saving that time, right? Then of course we have to compare that to the cost of actually delivering the automation. If we only have something that we need to do twice a year, it's probably not worth automating it, right? If we document it, it's probably sufficient to remind us. But if we're doing something 20, 30 times a day, 20, 30 times a week, then we have enough mass there to be able to say, well, actually, if we are going to automate this, we're going to get something back out of it, right? Of course, we have the benefits that we can get going into there as well in terms of reliability, reduced time to delivery if we're struggling with things which we may have the manpower for, but we're not getting time to hit the deadlines that the business would like. So we need to understand our repeatable processes, which sounds obvious, but is not necessarily as easy as you might think when you go and talk to people on service desks. What I found is until it gets properly documented, and even when it is properly documented, you find that there is quite a lot of variation within that process. And automation doesn't really like variation that much. If you can map out if this, then that, then you have a process that you've understood, and the variations within it all flow down. But if you can't create a nice flow diagram out of it, then you're going to be challenged to put logic in to be able to automate it. So those are the kind of things that you need to get to, and then you can start actually working on automating individual things. And then it becomes a technology choice as to what's the best thing to do. And different types of automation will come out with different answers as to what's the right technology there. So in preparation for this, and just part of my general reading recently, I came across an article from Gartner which had top 10 tips when going to automation. And one of their top 10 tips was not to get too wed to any one particular technology. And I thought that was really nice, that it can be great. Oh, we've got this automation platform and we can do this with it. And yes, you can, but it doesn't mean that this is the hammer, that is the tool, that is the answer to all of your questions, right? Sometimes, using something that calls a SQL script, for example, and something else that runs a PowerShell script, you might need to use different mechanisms in order to do that and to get those to work well. So be open-minded when it comes to this approach. Well, I'd also say don't create too many different ones either. There's a balancing act to be struck there. Okay, so that brings me to the end of all of my slides that I have here. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to move into the Q&A. And Lizzie, you're going to help me with this one. Do we have any questions that have come in?
Yeah, so we've had a few questions, Rich. I'm going to start with one that came in towards the beginning of your presentation. And this person has asked, would you replace the German O to OE properly already, or would that be a manual task?
Okay, very, very good question. Right, so let's just quickly jump back to the slide here, just so we can see that on the screen here. So this is the character replacement here of the O in my name there, as I've spelt it with an accented character. So we had the amount of discussions we had around this, unbelievable. So this company has got both Sweden and Denmark as a part of not just their organization, but the project team. And they started debating how you would change the O with an umlaut into what they call English characters. And one was, I think, just going into OU, and the other was OE. But the point was that they did it differently. They couldn't agree on each other. So there's no way that I would know if you're writing someone's name down, if it's a Danish name or whether it's a Swedish name. And so what we did was we just used a replace function, which is standardized. So there is a standardized way of doing this, and a lot of languages have got ways to be able to hit that. So what we did is it would just use this standardized replacement. So was the question, was it an O with an umlaut? Was that the precise character replacement? I believe that goes to just an O. There's a character in German which looks a bit like a capital B, which goes to double S, and its lowercase character goes to double S as well. Some of the other ones did something a little bit different, but what the reasoning behind this was that we said, well, this is the standard, so it's just an IT standard. So we've always got a reason to go back to people and say, well, if you don't like it, you can change it. But this is the way that the auto character replace does it, and it's not something that we've decided upon. So we're not favoring Sweden over Denmark, or Denmark over Sweden, or Germany over the Netherlands, or any of these little local battles that can come up. But it was something we needed to think about in terms of the cultural impact of this piece of work. So yeah, brilliant question. Thanks for that, Lizzie, and whoever sent it through. So next question, please.
Yeah, okay, so the next one we've had sent through says, for the email proposal, do you reference a list of existing email addresses to ensure there's no duplication?
Excellent question. Wow, people are really on the process side of things. Yes. So at this stage that you see on the screen, there is no validation of it. And the reason behind that is that in this company's schema, whatever email address you have, it will be based on first name dot last name, followed by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're joining the organization after that email address format has already been taken by somebody else. So what we actually do is we automatically look up what email addresses have been used and we assign the next character. At that point, that's what goes on to the email field, which is then shown from the service desk analysts. And in this process, the service desk analysts check the data and they hit go to start the automation off. So there is a human check in there as well to make sure that it does look okay. But they don't need to do anything in order to do the automatic number generation. That's done by the system itself. So that means they should always have an email address which is unique before we fire off the automation. And that kind of dovetails into the point about your error handling. The earlier in the process you can get your data to be good, then when you push into the automation, it will work fine. If you try to create an Active Directory user which has a duplicate email address, so it's UPN or a SAM account name as anyone else in the same Active Directory domain, that's it. It stops. You get an error message. It's not going to create, and you have to come back and start looking at what you did, and then maybe retry it. Okay, next question, Lizzie.
Great, so this one is a little bit less specific, but it reads, what are the factors that inform which service catalog items an organization starts with?
Ooh, yeah, very good question. Okay, so that comes through to what I was talking about at the end there. So I'll run the slides back through there. So we've got this part on the screen. So the analysis of the service desk data is one source of this. The other is, in my experience, it's largely talking to the service desk manager and to the IT manager. What are you currently getting a kicking over? That's not always a good measure. So if there is something that is a request that you think is a repeatable activity and can be codified and people are screwing it up, that's a really good starting point, because it goes to that reputational part that we had on the benefits slide. And it's difficult to fix. So automation might be a way in order to help you with that. And then the others is the combination of your frequency, the amount of time that it takes, and the delivery time that makes. So what are the things that people are most asking for, and what will give you the biggest benefit? So it's a combination of that combined with how easy is this to automate? So like with this as an example, we looked at this and we said a lot of the systems that people need access to need individual user creation activities to be done. So if you think they've got things like SAP, they've got their ITSM tool, they've got their HR tools, they've got their ERP tools, all of these kind of things. So once you've created the user in Active Directory, some of these tools will need a manual create on top of it. So we said, well, could we automate those? Well, yeah, we could, but we've got 50 different systems that we need to look at. Each one would require its own individually built call. It might be as simple as just doing a simple single API call that says create new user, here are the details, boom, and we've already got all of that captured, so we can go and do that. But we knew we had the Active Directory one as the biggest benefit and the easiest to implement, because we've got something that's already built, which creates that, that we just needed to adjust rather than having to investigate and work out from scratch. So it's that combination of how difficult it is to implement it, how much time and delivery time, human effort and delivery time we save, and how much is it going to increase our reliability. So it's those factors together that we use to work out what's the first things to work on. And then we produce a prioritized list and we start working through them. Okay, next question, Lizzie.
Fab. So I've got one question left. So if anyone's got any just before we finish, or this will be the final one that I get Richard to answer. So this is, how can you measure the value of implementing automation?
Yeah, so what we've got is a spreadsheet that we use that's a value calculator, and that gives you some hard figures to go behind it. So some of these things that I've talked about are difficult to calculate. So what is the value of having consistent AD data, which then feeds into other systems, which enables those things? It's difficult to put like a dollar figure against that. You can talk to it as a kind of, quantifiable, qualitative value rather than a quantifiable value. Whereas the total durations of our tickets, which we can cut down, that's something we can measure off the SD data, and we can say, right, we will deliver things, 270 weeks earlier than we would have, in our current situation, and we will save, one, human being per year in terms of the savings there, and that cost of that one human being is calculated at X number of pounds per year. How much does a service desk cost to hire, right? You can look at your own figures there and say, right, well, we hire them at around about this level of competence, and the market rate is around about this level. Total employment costs are about this. So if we just save that amount of work, I've never seen anyone actually get rid of anybody off of the back of it as using it for that, but you free those people up for other activities. So I'm producing one extra person's worth of value, productivity to the organization, So that's things that we put into business cases, and that's the kind of things managers tend to understand. So that's how we tend to try to measure value, a combination of the qualitative and the quantitative, but we've certainly found having the quantitative with it really helps to make the case. Okay, do we have any more questions, Lizzie, or are we done?
No, that's great. No, I think we've answered what we've had in so far. So if anybody did want to follow up or have a bit more of a conversation, the email is up, and I know that a few of you will have direct conversations with your account holders as well. And other than that, I'd like to thank you all for attending the webinar today. I think it's a great use case of the capabilities of automation and what we've managed to achieve with this particular customer. So thanks, Rich, for going through that today. And thank you all for it.
It's been a pleasure.
Great. Well, thanks again. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.